Welcome, everyone, to the extremely late Vivisection. This time, my fault. A terrible hardware malfunction, not my fucking webcam, which I didn't get fixed because I'm a fucking idiot and was totally just panicking today. But my keyboard went out today, and I had to go out and buy a new keyboard. And then
it was a hardware issue. It had nothing to do with the German experimental indie films you've been downloading en masse to your computer lately.
That's right. I do nothing of any sort that would ever get me into some weird hostile virus that I have to pay lots of money to uninstall, rather than let anyone in my immediate circle of friends and family know what kind of things I get up to.
Yeah. Although the webcam may yet have something to do with the fact that you downloaded the classic film, such as Herr Dr. Scheisse Latex, a German landmark.
No. We're done now. All right.
Should have been Herr Dr. Latex Scheisser. I fucked up the order. I really messed that one up.
Oh, God.
But we're here to talk about fights.
Yeah, we're here to talk about UFC 215, which is still, I get that casual fans, that nobody outside the hardcore fan base is going to buy this. I get that they're even hardcore fans who are like, fuck, I don't care.
Mm-hmm.
I actually really like this card a lot, personally.
Yeah, I'm pretty down with it. It's not like a UFC 214. It's not like a, oh shit, like invite your friends over, we're all going to split the pay-per-view and order 3 pizzas. It's not like a party kind of card, but it's pretty solid. Like, you get to see the best mixed martial artists on the planet. You get to see a meaningful rematch of an entertaining bout for women's bantamweight title. You get former lightweight champion, you get prospects, you get action fighter, well-known action fighters. Like, it's a good mix of what just looks like a bunch of fun fights.
Yeah, I can't hate this, even though even though I can't oversell it either. I can't be like, no, you should love it because I don't hate it. It's like, okay, no, I get it. Demetrious Johnson is not everyone's cup of tea.
Yeah.
And neither is. And Amanda Nunes, unfortunately, is the latest product. I know, fuck this camera. It is the latest product of the UFC's anti-hype train of going out and finding one of your key talents and just shitting on them until your fan base hates them.
Demetrious Johnson and Amanda Nunes both fit that bill, actually. So
yeah, so that really helps kill. When the president of the organization, when your promoter in chief goes out and is like, yeah, whatever, see if you can sell this shit. I'm not gonna.
Aren't you not doing? Don't you get fired for not doing your job that much in other positions?
Brought this up recently, and I like it as a good point on Dana White. Is that I think the idea that he views himself like a luxury goods salesman.
Yeah,
like and not a a promoter, the way that we think of like boxing promoters and all that. So it's more like, you go to the Ferrari dealership and you're there to buy a Ferrari, and he's there to sell you Ferraris. And if you don't want a Ferrari, he doesn't really give a shit,
Yeah. And he has absolutely no problem talking shit about the 3 Camrys on the lot.
Exactly.
Because he's trying to sell you that Ferrari.
Exactly. And
these aren't fucking cars. They're people. They're people who make money doing this for a living. And also, most of the ones he talks shit about tend to be really good fighters. They're the Jose Aldos and the Demetrious Johnsons and the Amanda Nuneses. Like, they're legitimate fighters who deserve respect and deserve people to see their fights.
They're usually good fighters that actually just need some promoting work to help sell.
Anybody who needs a promoter, Dana White hates, because you don't need to promote Ferraris. Everybody knows how good a Ferrari is, so fuck everything else. That seems to be the mentality.
Yeah. So anyway, enough about that. Let's get into this card and try to buzz our way through it.
Yeah.
First up, a lightweight bout: Cajun Johnson, Adriano Martins. Tell me about it.
Interesting for the fact that I think both guys have been out for quite a while now. Cajun Johnson's not fought since 2015, and Martins' last fight was that close loss to Leonardo Santos in October of 2016. So it's been almost a year and well over 2 for Cajun Johnson.
Yeah, for a guy in Martins who really tore shit up back when he was on the regional scene, he has slowed his career to a absolute crawl since getting to Strikeforce.
Yeah, he fought at a really great clip earlier in his career, but I think, unfortunately for him, it's not like being a boxer where you do that so you can really cash out and make huge money, but his career kind of looks like that of the typical modern boxer, where now he's just taking fights here and there, I guess, whenever he wants them. I think really these are two pretty similar guys, both pretty good takedown defenders, both pretty good submission grapplers, both pretty technical strikers. The differences are that Kajan Johnson throws a little bit more, and Adriano Martins hits significantly harder, and also not that well. So I really think that's going to be the difference. Even if Martins, who is prone to long bouts of inactivity in his fights, does give away a few minutes at a time, I think his power difference, his accuracy, his speed, those things are going to be enough to steal rounds, even if he's being outpointed. So yeah, I like Martins. Sorry, I like Martins by second round TKO.
Yeah, it's hard to know what Kajan will look like after a couple of years on the sidelines, dealing with what seem to be injury issues and maybe other career-related icing problems, where you say enough things, you complain enough, and the UFC's just like, we don't need you to fight that much.
Sure, yeah. Well, actually, no one really cares if we don't fulfill our end of the contract. So
yeah. And he's also, I think he's made a move to coaching a lot too. I think that's the bigger thing, honestly. But watching tape, Kajan definitely leads more. But I think Johnson also has a history of when he has to lead a lot, and when a fight gets hard, he gets messier.
Yeah, he has Amir Khan or Michael Bisping syndrome, where like the first punch is pretty good and well timed, and the second punch is all right, and by the time he throws a third punch in a combination, his feet are out of position, his posture's all broken, he's exposed.
Yeah, and Martins, I think that you see a fight like Leonardo Santos, and that lays the groundwork of how to beat Martins, which is to be as slow paced and better at picking him off.
Right.
So to really like put him in his kind of pace of fight. It's the sort of like the how to beat Jorge Masvidal thing. Martins is a very similar kind of thing, where it's like if you just keep it right at about Jorge Masvidal's pace, and you just do a little more work, pick him off a little better in spots and all that, you can catch him cruising and beat him.
Yeah, which Johnson could.
Which Johnson could, but my feeling is that he'll try to put more of a pace on him, and when you get a little sloppier against Martins, he knocks people out. Like he's a very dangerous grappler and striker when you open up and make mistakes. So.
For sure.
I got to pick Martins as well. Maybe Johnson tends to get stopped when he loses, so maybe by TKO in the second or third round, late in the fight.
Sounds about right.
Martins is a huge favorite. I've been high on Martins at different points in his career. I think finally I've got a grip on that. Leonardo Santos fight makes me look at these odds a little bit and go, I don't like that much. But he opened at -260, dropped straight to -370, and is now at -462.
Yeah, so, and I think, like, again, Kajan Johnson could beat that, but his numbers for output aren't that much higher than Martins's. Like, he's not a huge volume striker because he's not that comfortable in the pocket. And to basically outpick Martins, it's kind of like a Bisping Rockhold. Like, he would have to fight a really perfect fight or land one really perfect shot, because otherwise the athletic difference is going to become a factor before long.
And unlike Rockhold, Martins is insanely durable and has good defensive technique.
Right. Yeah.
I don't think he's ever been stopped, or if he has, it's been a long time.
No, you wouldn't call Martins like the best striker in the world, but he's also not like Rockhold, sort of getting by on his build and his athletic ability in a lot of spaces. He's pretty well put together across the board.
Johnson opened at +180, adjusted up to +295, is now up to +353. So wide odds there, wider than I think they should be, but that does not mean I I think that Martins, or that doesn't mean I'm like, oh yeah, Cajun Johnson, underdog of the night right there.
Not worth it. Don't look at Cajun Johnson no matter how long the odds get. It's just not a fight to bet on.
That brings us to a heavyweight bout. Luis Henrique against Arjan Bhullar. And this is going to be a weird fight. I hate trying to break it down because there's so little tape on Bhullar. But what there is tells me that I should pick Henrique, and that this is a terrible style matchup for Henrique.
Right. Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Because Henrique he's a much more battle-tested, much more experienced, much more complete fighter in the cage than what I've seen of Bhullar. I mean, there's something to be said when a guy has no fights out there and the clips you see of him are like just the same 3 shots of the one fight where he like gets a sort of tripped, he gets like a turn in the corner takedown on a single leg and then is like landing some pot shots from under the armpit.
It's like overhands to single leg from 3 different angles.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And what I see from Bhullar tells me that his wrestling doesn't actually look like it's that well set up for heavyweight, top-level heavyweight. He seems like a shot wrestler that loses steam on his shots before the shot gets in. And at the same time, Henrique, as a big power wrestler, he can get stuck in some really useless wrestling positions, and against somebody that's much more technical than him there's a high probability of him just, because it's not like he gets into a clinch where he can grind and use his mass and then starts landing clever pot shots and hitting clinch knees and looking for little trips and sweeps and getting all creative. He just kind of leans in and uses all of his energy to get the one takedown that he was trying to get.
Yeah, and not just technically, but Bhullar is also, of course, a lifelong wrestler.
Yeah.
And is a fully sized heavyweight. He weighs in 265, according to Wikipedia. He's 6'1". He's just around the same build as Luis Henrique, with maybe a little less strapping muscle, but you would assume a lot of conditioned strength built up from all those years of high-level wrestling.
So I'm picking Luis Henrique because I think he's more ready for a fight like this. I think his style is more made to win a fight like this. But this is a terrible matchup for him. And if he gets stuck in these clinch exchanges where all he's doing, trying to do with Bhullar is wrestle him, he could easily just burn himself out going for takedowns he can't get and then get taken down and sort of pitter-patted to a TKO. Like, I don't see anything out of Bhullar that's like, oh, this is highlight power. Oh my God, did you see that explosion in speed? It's not like Curtis Blades watching his regional fights where it's like he just took that man and threw him across the cage and then pounded him. It's kind of like, oh yeah, that's a nice technical like little thing you got going there. So
yeah, and that's all I got.
Yeah,
I'm with you. Obviously, the experience is an issue for someone like Bhullar. He's 5-0, I think, maybe 6-0, and he's fought reasonably good guys for someone with very little experience. He's doing what I think somebody who's 31 and has only just gotten to their MMA career should do, which is like fight some guys who have won 3 fights, beat them, and then go to the UFC. For Luis Henrique, if we look at him as the developing prospect in the UFC, which I think he is, then I like this matchup, even though I agree with you that it is dangerous in some ways, because it's kind of like Henrique is still young and inexperienced himself, so it's kind of like giving him not really a step back, but an opportunity to test how effective experience alone can be. Like
it's like the Tybura fight where it's like, okay, what did you learn from that Tybura fight where you spent all this energy trying for takedowns against somebody who could counter them?
Right. And here they're saying, okay, here's somebody who can also counter them. You're going to have to use your smarts and experience to figure out how to prevent it from happening. You have a clear opportunity not to fall into this trap, but the trap is there. I think Henrique will avoid the trap. And I think even if he didn't, you'd probably still have to think he'd be a little better accustomed to deal with fatigue than somebody who's never been outside the first round. somebody who doesn't really have the comfort on their feet to set up their wrestling and to really like keep relying on it if they need it.
Bhullar has been out of the first round. I mean, that's actually kind of one of the reasons that I'm not picking.
Oh, that's right. He had a 5-round fight, actually.
He had a 5-round fight and all that. The thing I'm seeing that you see, though, is that he's not finishing anyone.
Right. So I still have to favor that. Like, Henrique pushes a pace really well.
Yeah.
And I've definitely seen him waste energy, but I've also seen him do things that I would assume, like, he's going to be tired after this round, and then he comes back for the next round, and he just, like, he looks tired, but he just keeps doing them, which is a great sign. He kind of has a little Cain Velasquez vibe going on in the style he's putting together for himself. And it'll be interesting to see how Bhullar counters that with his wrestling, but if he's not going to put Henrique away, and he's not going to keep taking Henrique down, then just being able to battle him in the clinches is probably not enough to beat a much more experienced mixed martial artist.
Yeah, so. and I shouldn't say Bhullar's put nobody away. He's finished half his fights, but they're all by TKO, and I can bet, even without seeing them, that they're all ground and pound attritive TKOs that are just not like they're the kind of thing that don't work as well when you get to a higher level.
Sure. Yeah. So I like Luis Henrique. Might be a decision. I think Bhullar might be a good enough scrambler to survive if he gets taken down and survive in the clinch. And I don't think Henrique is quite good enough at keeping his distance to just hit him with like 10 straight range shots in a row. No. So he's going to pile into the clinch at some point, and that will be the saving grace for Bhullar if he does start to get outstruck badly.
Yeah, I feel you. Bhullar is actually the favorite, opened at -190, adjusted to -181, and is since slid to -194.
Because it's in Canada. I was like, why would that be? Oh, it's in Edmonton. I guess that's it. Bhullar is a Canadian wrestler, so that must be
he's also undefeated, and people have seen Henrique, and they know that Bhullar is a good wrestler, and that Henrique is a Brazilian national team wrestler, which is...
We could be very wrong, Zane. He could be the new Gavin Tucker. He might come in here, this Canadian prospect. He's favored, and we don't quite know why because we haven't seen a ton of footage, and he just styles on an experienced fighter. It could happen.
Although I'm pretty sure I picked Gavin Tucker over Sam Cecilia.
Yeah. I think maybe I
did, even off a few highlights. It was like,
but I was worried.
I know how Sam Cecilia fights, and
that's true. So maybe this will be karma for upsetting people by picking Tucker without footage.
he could be the next even Jeremy Kennedy we had some footage on, but he could be the next Jeremy Kennedy, guy that I serially underrate while he wins and eventually have to be like, well, okay, these parts of his style are really functional. Henrique opened at +150 and has been kind of bouncing up and down a little and up 156, and then just in the past few hours has jumped up to +160. So it looks like just now there may be money coming in on Bhullar. So that's a little surprising. Yeah, like Bhullar was -188. Now he's down to -194. There's a pretty steep shift last minute away from Henrique and towards Bhullar. Or it looks like there could be one. So I don't know. I think
sounds like local bettors to me.
I think that's all bad news for, I think it's all bad. Like, it just doesn't look, I don't know. I don't like it. Anyway, brings us to a lightweight bout. Mitch Clarke, Alex White. So, oh yeah, you go. Stop smoking and fucking.
I was waiting for you to throw to me. That's all. You're about to just steam on through. You were about to say, I believe, that we like Mitch Clarke, which has to be said anytime that we talk about Mitch Clarke, who is one of the coolest people in the fight game. A guy who is quite arguably a little too smart for fighting, for a very difficult job. Like, he's a very clever, thoughtful guy and has a lot of really insightful criticisms of how the fight game is put together and how it works.
Yep.
He's a solid fighter. He's worked really, really hard to expand his game recently, and we have seen some signs of that. But unfortunately for Mitch, like when he tries to work his striking improvements against somebody like a Joe Duffy or Michael Chiesa, it just doesn't, like it doesn't work the way that it would for somebody who is more athletic. And that's the big problem for Mitch, is that he just doesn't hit that hard. He doesn't move that fast. He's kind of uncoordinated. Like, it's clearly a challenge for him to pick up new skills and start applying them right off the bat. And I guess this is a more forgiving opponent for that, right? Alex White is not a top flight opponent. He's not a Joe Duffy or a Michael Chiesa, both of whom are legit contenders in this division. He's got a lot of obvious problems of his own, but he may still be quite a difficult challenge for Mitch Clarke because of that athleticism difference. White is a pretty strong guy, even someone who used to make the 145 limit. He's still pretty, built at 155. He looks strong and he's comparably big compared to his opponents. I'm just losing my mind right now. Talking about Alex White, it's got me all in a tizzy, Zane. But the number that really stands out to me, sorry, I'm a little verklempt. The number that stands out to me is takedown defense versus takedown accuracy. Mitch Clarke hits 18% of his attempted takedowns. Now, granted, that's against fairly good wrestlers, but Alex White's takedown defense is like 58% or something like that. So it's really, really incumbent on Mitch Clarke to hit those takedowns in this fight. And it's really, really incumbent on Alex White to avoid takedowns at all cost. And I think Alex might be able to do that, especially if he fights the way he did against Artem Lobov, puts a lot of volume out there, keeps his feet moving, if he doesn't stand in place to let Mitch work a takedown, then the fact that Mitch doesn't have a ton of drive or great timing on his shots is going to prevent him from bringing White to the ground. And even if he does bring White down, Mitch is a very tricky submission grappler, but White's a very good survivor on the floor. He's never been submitted. He's rarely dominated on the ground by his opponents. He tends to scramble pretty well, despite that not being his specialty. So I'm going to have to favor White. I think he's just a little bit closer to the fighter he could be than Clarke, who I think got a pretty late start on a lot of the skills he's still trying to develop.
Yeah. I mean, it should be said, though, as well, that when we talk about the takedown accuracy and takedown defense, that, as you noted, Clarke has really only faced really pretty top talent other than John. I mean, okay, his first 3 fights weren't top talent, but his last 3 fights have all been Ali Quinta, Michael Chiesa, and Joe Duffy.
And Clarke hitting 1 takedown on any of those guys would arguably be more impressive than Alex White stopping, 3 takedowns from.
And the other side of this is that Alex White's competition, other than Tony Martin, who took him down pretty easily, Artem Lobov, Clay Collard, Lucas Martins, and Esteban Payan, none of them are good wrestlers.
For sure.
And so there's a bit of,
Yeah, I mean, if Clarke gets White down, Clarke has some of the prettiest, trickiest jiu-jitsu you'll see. His submission over Iaquinta was one of the best things. Now, these aren't things that are they don't flow out of his game very well. No. It's kind of a puncher's chance thing where he just sees them and he knows more moves than everybody else. But if he finds an opening on the ground, he is very dangerous.
I am going to I'm going to make sure I don't want to be a betrayer, so I'm going to pick Mitch here.
What are you saying, Zane? Am I a betrayer?
You are. You very definitely are. But no, I am going to pick Mitch here because also I do think that his recent time that he's been putting in at the MMA lab is showing up for him.
For sure. The fight with Chiesa, I mean, it was a different Clarke in terms of just how willing he was to strike.
Yeah, and I think honestly, if he had been more willing to stick with his striking against Michael Chiesa, he would have done a lot better in that fight. His insistence on trying to out-wrestle Michael Chiesa ended up being a problem because Chiesa's nobody's idea of a great striker. He's tough, but
and weird, but it was a fight in which Clarke had to be emphatically shown that he couldn't get a takedown before he would just start throwing combinations. But when he did, I mean, I think a lot of people think he probably won that 3rd round.
Yeah. Joe Duffy was just a nightmare matchup for Clarke to come out and try and work his game against. Yeah.
Even if Mitch had survived through the 1st round, it still would have been a very tough fight.
And Alex White, his takedown defense concerns me. The way in Tony Martin fight, he just kind of gave him up. And I don't know, his style is so upright and wooden that I don't know that he can necessarily fix that. So I'm going to say that Clarke can get the takedowns and that he can work his jiu-jitsu game, and that White as good a power puncher as he is, and like reasonable a power striker as he can be, he's not a fluid enough one to knock many people out. And for Clarke, you know, he certainly can be hurt and can be knocked out, but he's not that easy to hurt. Like he's not hard to hit, but he's not easy to hurt. So I think Clarke can weather enough of the storm to get in on takedowns, and when he does, his doggedness will be worth more there than White's takedown defense.
Sure. Yeah, I think you might be right. I totally see that a path for that to happen. I'm
gonna pick the path, and I'm gonna do it partially just because I love Mitch. He's
a great guy. And I think either way, we're probably in for a back and forth fight. Like both guys have clearly very different things they want to do to each other to win, which usually makes for a compelling contest. And
yeah, Mitch absolutely could get stuck standing and outstruck by Alex White. Alex White, as he showed in the Artem Lobov fight, can be a very technical striker when he doesn't have to be concerned with a takedown threat. And that's the question is, can Mitch make him concerned about it? Because when he was in the fight with
Martin,
his striking took a huge step back. For sure.
He's a Nick Diaz, right? He can wrestle, but when he has to, the striking goes away.
Yeah.
And also, he's not as good as Nick as wrestling, so he's not actually Nick Diaz. He's Alex White.
Yeah, he's Alex White. All right, that brings us to a featherweight bout. Oh, no, the odds on this fight. Sorry, odds. Alex White is a sizable, reasonable favorite. Opened at -170, adjusted up to -127, and down to -160, and has since drifted out to -193. Clarke opened at +130, dropped to -107, and back up to +128, and has since risen up to +159. I'm not surprised about that. The way Clarke lost his last fight, it's going to be a lot of people are going to be betting. You know, not a lot of people are going to have a lot of faith in him.
Yeah, and personally, I don't have a lot of faith in this fight either way, so I would not bet on it at those odds.
Brings us to a featherweight bout. Gavin Tucker, Rick Glenn. Love this fight. Love seeing Gavin Tucker out there.
Speak the devil.
Yep.
Yeah, easily one of the best matchups on the prelims right here.
Yeah, and I think, honestly, Gavin Tucker, he's in one of those situations where it's going to take very specific types of fighters to beat him. And, you know, this is something like we talked about this with Darren Till before his fight with Bojan Velishkovic, where it's just like you actually have to go out and beat Darren Till. You can't just wait for him to make mistakes and wave him into you when you're on the fence and be like, yeah, come on, see what you can do.
You have a very slim chance of just tricking him into making a mistake by letting him win too much. You know, like it's not going to work.
And Tucker is a similar kind of fighter. We saw that in the Cecilia fight. He just took a rangy, safe fight, picked his shots, did very well in all of his exchanges.
He outstruck Cecilia 55-10 in that fight.
Yeah. And
that's an embarrassing differential.
Yeah, he just pantsed him, and he had no trouble just hanging back and being like, what, you can't hit me? I'm not coming to you.
Cecilia landed 2 strikes in both the first and second rounds.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tucker just put on a show and had his way with Cecilia.
Rick Glenn is a better, Rick Glenn has a better head on his shoulders when it comes to fighting.
For sure.
He is a much more aggressive, stock forward, throw combinations, be tough, and depend on being tough and making the fight messy and, really bringing the fight to his opponent. I don't think he's athletic enough to track Tucker down, though, or has the footwork to cut him off. He's very much a foot slow plotter. And as we saw in his Evan Dunham fight, he's even, by reasonable, even by slow guy standards, he's kind of slow.
Yeah. Evan Dunham, if Evan Dunham makes you look like you're kind of stuck in the mud, then you're not particularly fast.
No, he's foot slow and he's hand slow. And he's got what he has going for him is he's got a great, amazing chin and the confidence in that to know that he can keep taking shots and coming forward and you can't, he's not the kind of guy who's just going to get scared off of it being slow and then kind of fade away and let the fight slip away. He's going to keep going forward. I just don't think against somebody like Tucker that just being willing to come forward is going to be enough.
Yeah, I would like to also say, I mean, I think Glenn, he deserves props for being tough like Cecilia, but he is a tougher opponent than Cecilia.
Oh, yeah.
Because he's also like technically a lot more versatile and a lot sharper. He's got, even if he's kind of hand slow and foot slow, he's got good hands. He throws his combinations well. He's also got a nice long frame, which is going to be a different thing for Tucker. He might have to readjust his range in the early going to sort of account for how much longer Glenn's arms are than the typical opponents. And Glenn, unlike Cecilia, knows how to stop you from hitting him with the same shot over and over and over again. Like he's certainly tough, but he doesn't need that toughness just to survive in the same way that Cecilia does. Like, yeah, he'll take that shot a few times and then he'll try to find a way to stop you from finding it, or he'll find a way to punish you for landing it. He's a thinking fighter, even if he has sort of a crude style in a lot of ways. So I think it'll be interesting. Also, if Glenn ties Tucker up in the clinch, then we have a very interesting fight on our hands. We don't really know how good Tucker is in the clinch, and Glenn is quite dangerous there. He's got a really nice tie clinch. So
that's very true.
Yeah, Glenn's ability to keep not a blitzing pace. He's not a blitzing fighter by any stretch, but to keep a slowly building pace for the duration of 15 minutes, to absorb punishment from a fighter in Tucker who doesn't seem to have a huge amount of power in his shots. He stings, but maybe doesn't thud when he hits people.
Yep.
That means that Glenn is going to have a chance to make this a really fun fight as it continues. But I side with you overall. I think that Tucker's dexterity, his speed, his creativity and cleverness from long range, just mixing things up, is going to keep Glenn reactive a little too long for him to win more than one round in this fight.
Yeah, I also worry a little with Glenn how sort of stretched out and tracked in he gets when he tries to extend his combinations leading. Like he's got a good one punch form, and then as he throws two or three, he's basically on a straight line, and those punches they start to really stretch out his defense.
Yeah. And we are talking about like a seriously skillful striker in Tucker. So even though I think 15 minutes of fairly back and forth fighting is what we're in for, I wouldn't be shocked if Glenn charged forward and Tucker put him to sleep like Tysonov did last weekend. Like Tucker's sharp enough that he can really punish somebody who is used to being able to just sort of charge forward recklessly and see what the other guy does.
Yeah, a lot of MMA fighters get into they have a career where nobody makes them pay for just charging in on a straight line.
It totally makes sense to charge in against most guys because most guys are just going to back straight up or try to get away, and so you might catch them with the third or fourth shot.
Yep.
But somebody who takes an angle immediately and tries to sting you, they will. I mean, there's a reason boxers don't do that.
Yep. All right. Gavin Tucker, Rick Glenn. Tucker is a good-sized favorite. Opened at -155, dropped down to -2, 187, and has since fallen all the way down to -290. So he's lots of money coming in on him. And Rick Glenn opened at +115 and has steadily risen up to +234. Which
that's fine by me.
Yeah, makes sense. I'm not surprised. It's a tough matchup for Glenn. Being a plotter and having a really good athletic sniper as your opponent is it's rough.
Doesn't seem like a super winnable fight for Glenn, but Glenn is tough enough that it still feels like it should be a fun matchup, which is great.
We saw two fights: Mike Santiago and Zabit Magomed-Sharipov and Felipe Silva versus Merbek Taisimov. Both guys who are more athletic than Rick Glenn, faster and more dynamic, and both had a ton of trouble trying to walk in on guys who can back up and cut angles while landing shots.
Mm-hmm. It's a new era, Zane. This is it. Gavin Tucker is the figurehead of the new era of MMA striking. Forget Conor McGregor. He's old news. We're all about Gavin Tucker now.
That's right.
whose nickname is the Governor.
The Governor. That's right. Which I feel like when your last name is Tucker, there are a lot of options that maybe the Governor, maybe something just totally separate is the better way to go.
Maybe. Although the other one, apparently, his other nickname was the Newfoundland Terror, which I kind of like.
I kind of like that too.
Yeah, that sounds like a good H.P. Lovecraft book.
All right. That brings us to a women's bantamweight bout. Sara Moras, Ashlee Evans-Smith. Take it away, Connor.
Boy, what a fight. Another one. This is one of the other weird ones in the card. Sara Moras also has not been in the cage since 2015. It's been over 2 years at this point, 26 months by my rough estimation. And Ashlee Evans-Smith continues to improve in very small strides. She looked pretty good, I thought, against Ketlen Vieira, and Ketlen Vieira just looked better than I expected and beat her. But I thought that Evans-Smith showed some nice, pretty good, if sort of bog standard defense in that fight. She didn't just stand there with her hands down in pocket and let Vieira hit her after she threw. She was pretty crafty on the feet, and it was really a misfortune for her that she couldn't manage to get any takedowns or make that really work for her in any way. So I'm going to have to pick Ashlee Evans-Smith here. I think just being more recently active, continuing to improve. Sara Moras has just never really blown me away for what she's been able to do in the cage. And every time she steps up against a reasonably good fighter like Raquel Pennington or Ketlen Vieira, Yeah, for Sara Moras, every time that she steps up, I'll have to look at her record to remember who she's lost to. Jessica Andrade and also Rocky Pennington. Yeah. And she loses. And otherwise, she's beating women like Alexis Dufresne, which is not a huge marker of
Juliana Pena, but that was by doctor stoppage.
Yeah. Also, Juliana Pena, like way early in her career, and you know how Juliana Pena is.
I do.
Juliana Pena could lose to anyone, and I wouldn't really be that surprised.
Even today, no matter what she's doing, Pena seems to have this is the thing I'm here to do in this fight, and I'm going to keep doing it, whether it's working or not. And
yes,
that's why she got armbarred by Valentina Shevchenko.
Yeah, hard-headed and not in the way you want to be for fighting. So, yeah, I like Ashlee Evans-Smith. I think she's probably going to sort of tepidly outstrike Moras and maybe get some takedowns. And I don't expect it to be an amazing fight.
Yeah, I will say this for Sara Moras. Honestly, watching her, I think she's really technically one of the better wrestlers in women's bantamweight, especially. She does a really good job getting low, getting her hips down below her neck and making a shot and then trying to turn a corner afterward. She's just not very athletic at all. Mm-hmm. And so when she drops for that shot, usually what happens is her knee hits the canvas and all of a sudden all the force that you had going in is directed straight down rather than forward. And then she has to try to hit the corner, turn the corner, stopped on a takedown. And then people just kind of push her over because she's spent all her momentum before she got in on the technique part of her wrestling. And I don't know if there's anything she could do about that. I think it's just a physiological thing. But it is what has made her an interesting competitive fighter. Like, she's a good, crafty grappler, and she is a good, reasonable wrestler when she gets the opportunities. Mm-hmm. But Evans-Smith is just a bigger, better athlete, and that has generally been the problem for Moras. And Smith has, she kind of got shell-shocked against Ketlen Vieira because she finally fought somebody that throws volume. And it was
somebody who throws 3 punches every time they throw punches.
Yeah. And it was just like, you could see her defense was there and active, and she was blocking a lot of stuff, but she was just kind of dumbstruck too. Mm-hmm. It's just like, I have no idea what to do about this.
Yeah. But that kind of approach is sadly very rare in this division, and I don't think Sara Moras can replicate it.
No, this is going to be more like the Evans-Smith getting the chance to be out at range, fighting like she did against Veronica Macedo after the first round, fighting like she did against Marion Renault, where it's just let's trade pot shots and you can let your athleticism come into play. You can always be comfortable. And unless she just absolutely cannot think of how to stop a takedown when Moras gets in on her leg, then she should be fine. So.
Which she probably can, because not only is she more athletic, but also with, you know, one of the better wrestlers in this division being a pretty low bar to clear, Evan Smith probably is close to that bar herself, even though she's not a great MMA wrestler.
Which is weird because she's one of the few women who has like an actual deep amateur wrestling background.
Right.
And they always bring it up every time. And then in the cage, her wrestling game is just so hit and miss.
I wonder if she was never much of a takedown artist as a wrestler.
Probably not.
Because you can see her wrestling, the quality of her wrestling when she's on top. She's got really nice top control, her rides, and she does great damage with ground and pound from those positions. But getting there is more of a problem. But maybe Moras failing on a takedown will be the opening that Evan Smith needs to just take half guard and go to work.
Yeah, that would be good to see, because Evan Smith is really good on in top ride when she gets the chance.
I'm hoping for anything other than a tepid kickboxing match.
Yeah, which is what's most likely, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'm praying.
Odds on that fight: Moras is the underdog, opening at plus 175 and climbing up to plus 205. And Evan Smith, the favorite, opening at minus 245, adjusting up to minus 229, and adjusting all the way back, or falling all the way back down to minus 253. So that seems reasonable. I think Evan Smith deserves to be a reasonable favorite, not a huge favorite, because she doesn't work in volume and she doesn't use her wrestling well enough in fights to make any fight almost anything other than close every time. And that brings us to a flyweight bout: Henrique Cejudo, Wilson Reis. And I feel a little bad about this, because I think Wilson Reis is going to find himself in a position in flyweight that is unenviable, which is that after a career-long climb to the top, you know, this is from 2007 to 2017, it took for Wilson Reis to climb to the top, you know, and obviously he climbed to the top twice in Bellator as well. And, but never, let's see, semifinal, so never even fought for a title in Bellator during his time there. But so after a career-long fight to climb to the top, he hit Demetrious Johnson, who just styled on him in one of the best performances of Johnson's career, one of the most one-sided.
Yeah, easily.
And now he's going to fight Henrique Cejudo, and I think it just is going to be kind of broken. Like, I get the feeling Wilson Reis could be one of those title challengers who's just never the same after winning the title.
It's funny you say that, because I have the same feeling. I just think of Wilson Reis knowing, like, I'm Wilson Reis. Yeah. I've been fighting since 2008. It's been a really long time. I fought like 30-something fights. I've gotten to the top a few times. This is the time I've finally gotten there in the best organization I've ever fought in. I'm 32, and I got fucking styled on. What the hell do I do now?
Yeah.
Like, what's Wilson Reis' career goal? It's possible that he's just like, well, I'm never going to get there again. Like, and if I do, there's no way I could ever get to actually hold the top of the mountain. So it's over for me.
Yeah.
Whereas Cejudo, like, had all kinds of things at his stage in his career that he could build on and improve after his own loss to Demetrious Johnson. And we've already seen the results of that improvement.
Yeah. So Wilson Reis, part of the problem here too is that Wilson Reis has a style that, like, on his climb, everybody now knows what Wilson Reis does and how he does it. You know, there's a power boxing game that is somewhat rudimentary, but is tricky if you let his grappling and wrestling game go. There's a power wrestling game that is solid, but not dominating. It's better than the average. And then there's a lockdown top control game that you want nothing to do with. And if the wrestling game doesn't click, nothing else clicks.
Right.
The wrestling game has to be going for the power boxing game to go, and it has to be going for the top game to go, because on bottom he's not a terrible grappler. It's not like all his grappling skills vanish, but he has no desire to be there, and he doesn't work there. Like, that's not how he fights.
Mm-hmm.
And Cejudo, like, I don't see Wilson Hayes being able to go out and get takedowns on Cejudo and make his wrestling game work early.
Yeah, that's the one sad fact you have to face when you're fighting Henry Cejudo is like, oh, I'm not really going to be able to take him down and keep him down. And that at flyweight, like, that fucks up a lot of the elite guys' games.
Yeah,
it really does. Like the Formigas, the Haces, the Ortizes, like if they can't get you down and make you scramble and keep you on the ground, then even Demetrious Johnson, it's difficult in some ways. He has to adapt his game when he can't get you down over and over again.
And Cejudo, in the meantime, hasn't become some like striking savant maestro out there.
He's become a wild man.
What he is, and what he still is more than ever, is insanely confident in his ability to strike and to take strikes.
Yeah.
And Wilson Hayes is not that. Wilson Hayes, he needs the confidence of his wrestling to strike. He needs the confidence that he can, like, that you have to watch out for other parts of his game to make that part functional.
Mm-hmm.
And without that, Cejudo's just going to walk him down and maul him.
Yeah, I have the same feeling. Hayes is following the same career development track as Frankie Edgar, but he's already 32 and he's like still like 8 years behind where Frankie Edgar is right now. Like,
yeah,
Edgar started with, oh, you threaten the takedown, you get the takedown once, that leads to the strikes. And then Edgar developed to, you threaten the takedown, that leads to the strikes, and maybe that leads to the takedown. Hayes hasn't quite gotten to fully understanding that part of the process yet. So really, as you said, without the takedown scoring and without being able to take some top position off of them, Hayes is striking. He's pretty uncomfortable on his feet, actually. So Cejudo just kind of being a maniac who wants to throw bombs or wants to force his way into the clinch, or if Cejudo fights this fight the way he fought Joe Benavidez, I think he might knock Wilson Hayes out. And even if he doesn't, I think we're probably looking at Cejudo just being able to stuff takedowns and sort of do what he wants on the feet. Hayes is not to be overlooked. Like, again, when he is comfortable on the feet, he's got some skills.
Yeah.
Like he was outstriking Yuta Sasaki when they fought after he threatened the takedown, even though Sasaki had the reach and the skill to hit him before that point. But without those takedowns, it's Henry Cejudo, the comfortable striker, versus Wilson Hayes, the striker who needs to wrestle. So I like Cejudo by first or second round TKO. That sounds about right.
Yep. Odds on that fight, Cejudo is the favorite, opening at minus 420, surprisingly, and jumping up to minus 280 and since fallen down to minus 339 or so, which is about where it stayed.
Are we the kind of show where you say that someone's at minus 420 odds and we don't make a joke about it?
I don't know. You smoke. You want to make a joke about it? I'm cool. Like that.
Only like ironically. I mean, I wasn't expecting you to be on board.
Only ironically, he says as he takes the 10th hit of his hookah.
This is not 420. This is tobacco with flavoring from molasses, okay?
Okay. I'm sorry. I implied that
if you were to smoke Henry Cejudo's
the hookah across from me,
if you were to smoke Henry Cejudo's betting odds out of this hookah, you would ruin it. Okay, Zane?
Okay, fair.
So now tell me, is Wilson Hayes the underdog at plus 666? Because that'll really be...
Okay, well, I would not be able to pass up making that joke. I'm definitely...
You are definitely a Satanist.
He opened at plus 300, dropped down to minus 226, and has since risen back up to minus 265 or so, and he's stayed pretty much flat there. Not much movement on these lines at all. I'm
fine with that. Is there a prop on Cejudo by inside the distance?
Prop bets, Cejudo wins inside distance plus 362.
I mean, that might be the only way to really get value out of this, because Hayes does not have a great chin. I mean, he recovers well, but he's been flash KO'd and flash knocked down many times in his career. And I think Cejudo's probably going to try to swarm him at some point.
Yep.
So that might be a little
right out of the gate. I mean, Cejudo he comes out no fucks given.
Yeah, especially if he's trying to get back to that title shot himself. Like, you are incentivized to put on a quick and violent show. So,
yep.
Cejudo inside the distance at plus 328. That might be some value.
Yeah. That brings us to a women's bantamweight bout: Sara McMann, Ketlen Vieira. And I like this fight a lot.
Yeah, same here. The aforementioned Ketlen Vieira. Not a super complicated game, but one that will work, I think, for her surprisingly well against a lot of opponents in this division. Just throwing combinations was enough for her to outstrike Ashlee Evans-Smith. And Vieira, like, the combination was almost the same one every time, too. It was like left hook to counter the right hand. As soon as you know you've evaded the right hand, uppercut, left hook, uppercut. It was like the same thing every single time, but she was willing to plant her feet and throw. And that will be a problem for Sara McMann if she can't get her takedowns going.
Yep.
If Sara McMann is forced to strike with Vieira, Vieira is not Amanda Nunes, but she can replicate the result of Amanda Nunes just by pouring on the volume and being willing to get violent. But think
Sara McMann has always been somebody in the past who has been willing to kind of go away if a fight gets tough.
True. Yeah, that's why I'm a little worried for McMann here, because she's kind of shut down. She's even in fights where she's winning, she's taken the safest route to victory a few times, like really been inactive. But that mindset in this fight sort of just says get takedowns, right? If you're going to beat Ketlen Vieira the safest way possible, you're going to take her down at every opportunity. And I think McMann will be able to do that. Now, Vieira on the ground, does have some skills, and I am never that confident in McMahon's top game, because even though she's got some really nice moves from her wrestling background, she has this weird thing where she looks uncomfortable or just kind of overthinks and doesn't quite know what to do on the ground. And that, like her jiu-jitsu in particular has been a problem and continues to be. But she looks like she's sorting those things out. She looks like she's got her confidence back. She looks like she knows that she's pretty much the best shot takedown artist in this division, and that's her path to victory against most opponents. If she does that, I think she can take a win over Vieira. If she can't get the takedowns, I think Vieira is going to outpoint her and possibly rough her up pretty badly on the feet.
Yeah, that's how I see it too. I would say I think that the biggest improvement in McMahon's game, other than the confidence in her ability to actually plant and throw more than one strike at a time, is that she looks like she's added a lot of ground and pound lately. Mm-hmm. In her recent fights, she has been much more willing, like her Alexis Davis fight, much more willing to just posture up, find positions, throw strikes, keep the fight working, and use what positioning she can get. And
but even in that fight, she still had moments where she was just getting elbowed in the top of the head and not really knowing what to do about it from guard. So those are the things that worry me. Like,
yeah,
McMahon's MMA jiu-jitsu game is still a work in progress. And for somebody who their path to victory is getting takedowns, like, what you do after the takedowns really matters.
Yeah, I'm picking McMann. The biggest reasoning being that I don't think Ketlen Vieira is willing to take back steps. She seems like a fighter that wants to move forward and pressure constantly, which means that when McMann wants to meet her for takedowns, she probably won't have any trouble finding her.
Yeah, or 4 strikes, because I did say, like, Vieira's volume is going to be a problem for McMann on the feet, but McMahon's power and accuracy and speed are going to be problems for Vieira as well. And if Vieira tries to do what she did against Evans-Smith, where she was like waiting on the right hand and then pulling away, a few times she shoulder rolled it, I think accidentally. I don't think she probably was aiming for that technique, but she would catch it on the shoulder and come back. Like, that little short pull away movement where you're like, well, if the punch lands, I'll roll with it. You might just take a Sara McMann right hand. Like, if she just overextends and follows through, you might just take that shot and go away, because McMann has power.
She does. I think in general, though, she's going to come out like she did in the Alexis Davis fight, throw a couple of strikes, charge in forward, and Vieira will be right there to say, oh, you can't take me down. You can't out-wrestle me. And she will.
Yeah, that's a great point. Like planting your feet and countering is a great thing to have, but if it's your only way of attacking, you just wait for the other person to move and then you plant your feet. You are giving them chances to play tricks on you.
Yeah. Vieira is the underdog here. Opened at plus 185, adjusted up to plus 214, 216 right now. Not a lot of movement after the initial adjustment. And Sara McMann opened at minus 265, bounced around up and down to right about there still, and has gone up and down quite a bit, honestly, and is now at minus 270. Or I shouldn't say quite a bit, but there's been some movement on her line in there. So minus 270 right now. I feel a little bit like she shouldn't be that big a favorite, just because I think she has so much. She has a tendency to just kind of freeze up in fights.
She has persistent problems.
Yeah, and Vieira does not have that problem, it would appear. Vieira will just go out, put her game out there, and do it as much as she can. And we've seen McMann in her losses, her loss to Amanda Nunes, her loss to Miesha Tate, her loss to Ronda Rousey. They all just kind of were like her freezing up and just getting trucked.
Even her win over Lauren Murphy was like freezing up in top position and, in my opinion, losing the fight by just not knowing how to stop being hit from guard.
Yeah. So I think that the odds are a little wide there personally, but
sure.
I don't bet. So what the fuck do I know? I just say what I see.
The camera is slowly drifting down so that if you please don't touch it, because in a couple minutes we're going to get a nice Zane Simon crotch shot.
Oh.
No, don't.
No. Oh, shit.
Let it drift down, okay? I got to see the show.
Okay, fine. Jesus. All right. That brings us to the main card now in a featherweight bout. Jeremy Stephens, Gilbert Melendez. And this fight totally fascinates me because, on the face of it, I know, I'm sorry. On the face of it, Gilbert Melendez is a better fighter than Jeremy Stephens. He has more technical depth to his game, more avenues of attack, a more well-rounded skill set that he implements better. And he's obviously, he's reached a higher point because of it. I'm not sure he wins this fight. For one, I don't know. I might be picking him, but I feel really shaky about it. Part of the big thing is it's his first cut to featherweight. And it's his first cut to featherweight since he fought in Shevchenko back in 2005. Ever since then, he's been a lightweight. And don't know how that'll go. Guys who've tried it, a lot of them don't look good. Gilbert Melendez isn't the biggest lightweight in the world, but neither is Anthony Pettis, and he looked like a fucking scarecrow at 145.
And it's not like the guys who are beating Gilbert are beating him because they're like outsizing him by a huge margin.
No.
He doesn't look, he's never looked, people have been saying this for ages, but I've never thought that Gilbert was too small for lightweight.
No, he doesn't seem like he's too small for lightweight. He seems like at the elite levels of lightweight, his game hasn't advanced enough to take
he's just
out.
He's just a little outmoded. Like his game fit for half a generation ago's contenders, and now he's getting a little old, and that's all.
Yeah, and so the thing, I guess on the face of it, the thing that really gives me pause is that Gilbert Melendez really can't fight effectively without coming forward. He is not a circle out at range and pick off his moments and in out kind of fighter. He is a fighter who he will stay at range and he will feint and he will look and he will bob and then he will pick his moment to commit. And when he commits, he has to come in and he has to sit down for 2 or 3 or 4 punches, or he has to rush into the clinch. And then if things go from there, and then he can maybe reset after that and we get that again. But it's not going to be like, oh, I came in, I sat down, I threw a punch, I stepped back out. He's very committed to planting his feet when he wants to sit down and throw.
Yeah.
And Jeremy Stephens is not a guy that you really want to just come in and sit down and plant and say, well, let's see what happens. It's not the smart way to fight Jeremy Stephens. And if he thinks you're going to wrestle like he should against Gilbert Melendez, if he expects wrestling, he's a good counter wrestler. If Jeremy Stephens does not expect wrestling, if he thinks you're some schlub like Renato Moicano or Charles Oliveira, then he'll just kind of like let you get whatever takedowns you want because he had no idea you were going to shoot for them.
Jeremy Stephens is totally a fighter whose success is based on how seriously he takes his opponents. Like,
yeah,
if he really respects your shit like Cub Swanson, he's going to put on a really great striking performance until he injures himself. If he thinks you're just some untested kid like Renato Moicano, he looks like a brute who has no idea what he's doing on the feet.
Yeah, and I think it really is all about, it's like the same thing with the Renan Barão fight. Like, he respects Renan Barão. He knows this is a former champion. I got to come out there with my game on point. And everything is just tight as shit, locked down. Fight's a great fight.
Frankie Edgar, another good performance. Yeah, if he takes you seriously, Jeremy Stephens is capable of being a contender-type fighter.
Yeah.
Still, to this day.
And I think, I see some similarities with Gilbert Melendez and Renan Barão. Frankly. I mean, the same way that they, like to commit when they have to strike. Like, they want to step in and they want to plant and they want to throw. Barão is much better at keeping range classically and picking people off than Melendez is. But there's some of that in there. And then, the follow-up wrestling game that they've both had in their pocket. I'm not saying they're perfect ports. Don't quote me on that. But the problem here is the other thing that's making me feel like I should pick Melendez is that Melendez his chin is still there. He got stung by Anthony Pettis, but he still didn't get knocked out by him.
Yeah. And he fought a really great fight against Barboza in his last bout.
Yeah. And so he can still take a hell of a punch. And he's never been knocked out. He's always been the toughest dude out there. And if he can still take a punch, chances are he can outwork Jeremy Stephens. If he still has faith in his durability. Because, I mean, that's part of the thing with Renan Barão is that faith in his durability is gone.
Sure, yeah.
So it makes this a very hard to predict fight for me. Like, I think Melendez can go out there with his game, and if he can not get hurt, he can pressure Stephens and fight a good fight and fight the kind of near championship level fight that he's always been capable of. But it will be the fight Stephens wants, most likely. Like, I think it'll be the best fight for Jeremy Stephens, where Gilbert Melendez is picking his moments and then just coming in and trying to surprise Jeremy Stephens with because that's the thing with Melendez is he's always had he's kind of like, talked about this last time, CR Bahadurzada, where you kind of look at him and you're like, yeah, what? It doesn't, Gilbert Melendez he's never had the most like shot. Gilbert Melendez has never been like, oh, look at Gilbert Melendez fucking cut out there. Like,
yeah. Gilbert Melendez is definitely more on the Jake Shields side of the scrap pack than he is the Diaz side in terms of just physical toughness.
Yeah.
The appearance of physical toughness.
But he has ridiculous hand speed. Like, massively underrated hand speed. Melendez will be out there with guys who are more technical strikers than him, and he just shocks people by beating them to the punch. It's not always pretty, but even in his fight against Edson Barboza, like, he just came out with this like leaping uppercut that he just, he can just uncork these strikes at lightning speed. So, I don't know. This is really making it tough on me. I think at the end of the day, I'm going to go with my gut, and I'm going to pick Jeremy Stephens, even though I feel like I should pick Melendez because I know I can depend on his toughness, and he's got a more well-rounded game. He's got different tools he can dig to, but I don't trust him at 145, and I think he's going to fight Stephens' fight. So you're muted.
Stephens tends to, I'm just looking at their numbers to get to sort of add to what you said. Stevens tends to take more shots from his opponents even when he wins than Melendez does. And so there are definitely opportunities here for Melendez to just exchange with Stevens and outdo him with speed and volume.
Yep.
But to me, what the big question is, what kind of fight are we going to get? Like, how is Gilbert Melendez going to respond to the fact that Jeremy Stevens, who I assume will be taking him seriously and will probably come in here looking a little more like the Stevens who fought like Renan Barão or Frankie Edgar, then that kind of Jeremy Stevens tends to just kind of inexorably come forward. And does Gilbert Melendez try to outbox him from the outside, something he's not really done, or does he decide to meet him and wrestle with him and fight with him inside? And in either one of those cases, it feels a little too dangerous for Gilbert, because if he's trying to fight from the outside, which I've never seen him do that well, then he, unless he can put on like a Moicano performance, and again, that performance I think was helped by the fact that Stevens wasn't really at his best, then I think Stevens will win on points. And if he tries to exchange with Stevens, Stevens' power and his defensive wrestling probably are too much for Gilbert to make much headway. Like, I think he'll probably hit Stevens a good amount, but can he make those hits count as much as Stevens do? And I don't think they will, especially because I have a lot of qualms with Gilbert Melendez moving down to 145 at 35 years old for the first time in over a decade. So I agree with you. I'm going to go with Jeremy Stevens. I think it'll be a unanimous decision, but I think Gilbert's going to get knocked down at least once.
Yeah, it's an interesting fight because it's like I say, Gilbert Melendez at his peak has been a better fighter than Jeremy Stevens. He is a more crafty, more well-rounded fighter, but this is just the right fight for Jeremy Stevens.
Right. At the right time. You want to see a legendary fighter's toughness evaporate, suck 10 pounds of water weight out of their body. And we may in fact see that Gilbert Melendez's chin is maybe reliant on the fact that he's been a small, pretty much fully hydrated lightweight for most of his career.
Could be. Melendez opened at -105, climbed up to -10 or +104, and has since dropped down to -112. Stevens opened at -135 and has slowly climbed up to -113. So they are currently dead even in the odds. And I'm fine with that. I do think, I favor Stevens, so obviously. So.
I'm with you. Sorry. I was muted.
Yeah. All right. Light heavyweight bout next. Ilir Latifi, Tyson Pedro. Take it away.
I'm gonna have to go with Latifi here. And I don't want to say this is not an interesting fight, because I think Tyson Pedro is easily one of the most interesting prospects in the UFC right now, especially because he's in such a prospect-starved division, 205. But Tyson Pedro has not been outside the first round. And Ilir Latifi is, at this point, a very experienced gatekeeper sort of fighter in this division. And Tyson Pedro tends to beat people by shocking them with a big strike, which he could do against Latifi. He could catch him with something big. But Pedro usually has to take a few licks of his own to do that. And then he gets people in the clinch and takes them down. And that's also very difficult to do against Latifi without suffering the consequences yourself. So I think Pedro will probably have a good first round. I think he'll have his moments, even if he'll probably also get stung a few times in surprise by Latifi. But I think that's all Latifi will need, is to surprise Pedro enough times that he slows him down. And if he can slow the pace of this fight to a crawl, then he can outpoint Pedro without too much difficulty, or possibly catch him with a big shot and put him away. So I'm going with Latifi by decision.
Yeah, I want to pick Pedro in this fight. I love Latifi, I do. But he's obviously it feels like Latifi in his incredibly slow-paced career. It feels like Latifi's moment is kind of come and gone. Like the past 2 years, somewhere in there, were the time for him to really make his run. And he lost that fight to Ryan Bader, which didn't help at all. And it hasn't happened. Like, he hasn't fought since then. And I'm not saying that he's suddenly shot or something. It's just Tyson Pedro, guys like that are the new blood in this division. The UFC's gone out of their way to sign as many young light heavyweights as they can, and it's paying dividends for them. That said, though, the thing that makes me pick Latifi here, and like I say, I'm not saying like Latifi's just done, because he's not, but
he's just not going to advance.
Yeah, it's just he's no longer the fighter to be excited about, the new talent. Is really how much Pedro concedes pace and spacing and room. I talked about this with the fight, the Rustam Khabilov Des Green fight, where Des Green has a problem that he concedes the distance to his fighter, or to his opponent, that he concedes the range, and how he was able to pick Emmett off because Emmett had to get inside and take, and open himself up to being countered. And it's not like Latifi's some master of range play, but Green is also a better striker than Tyson Pedro. I think Pedro at the moment, even in his fight that he had against Paul Craig, like he just put himself straight back on the fence, gave Craig the clinch as much as he wanted, did good work there, but all of his success came after giving Craig exactly the fight Craig wanted. And against somebody who's as much a physical force as Ilir Latifi is, that's really worrying. Now, the flip side of that is that Tyson Pedro is a very dangerous fighter. Dangerous on the ground, dangerous with his punches, and Latifi is eminently predictable. Like, he really only comes forward with these few big, bobbing, swinging strikes, looks for a takedown, a clinch, and then looks for a power takedown. And they're pretty slow-paced because he can't afford to burn much energy.
Oh, my God. Latifi is light heavyweight Tyron Woodley. He just is. Like, that's the game. It's like back into the fence, try not to do much, hit them with a big right hand, and convince them not to do much either.
Yeah.
That's it.
It is. And so there are many opportunities here for Pedro to turn that to his own advantage, to take the fight to Latifi, to catch Latifi being predictable. But Latifi's a tough dude. He takes licks well, other than his Jan Blachowicz loss, which was kind of a shocking one. And maybe something that Pedro can counter.
Pedro by liver kick TKO would be pretty amazing.
But in general, I think that Pedro is going to be happy to let Latifi try to clinch with him, and I think that's going to be his undoing for at least a round. And after that, like you say, he's never been out of the first round, and we just don't know what he can do. He doesn't, he doesn't have the the whole Ion Kutalaba thing, where you're like, okay, this dude runs ultra marathons in his spare time, and all he does is punch for round after round after round. Pedro doesn't, he doesn't look like he's necessarily the most clean living, cardio machined out fighter in the world.
Yeah, he's probably a guy who appreciates the fact that lifting lots of weights and training really hard means he gets to get 2 Chipotle burritos for dinner instead of just 1.
Yeah.
He's that type of dude. He's my type of dude. I get him. And by the way, also rooting for Tyson Pedro, and I think it's only natural in a fight with Ilir Latifi for humans to root for other humans, which is why I think we're both supporting Pedro. Not
the Santaran.
Tyson Pedro here over the creature from beyond the veil, Ilir Latifi.
So I'm picking Latifi. I'm hoping Pedro can pick him off and catch him being predictable, but I think Latifi can fight safe enough to drag Pedro into deep water and make this fight his. Odds on that bout, Latifi is coming in as the underdog, opened at -140, actually, adjusted to -129, stayed there for quite a while, and in the past couple of hours, a bunch of money has come in on Tyson Pedro. Latifi went from minus 123 to plus 102. So a late betting shift to bring Latifi from mild favorite to mild underdog. Yeah, I don't know if you just heard that, but late betting shift sees Ilir Latifi go from mild favorite to mild underdog.
Now, should we bet on light heavyweight?
Yeah. And then on the other side, Tyson Pedro opened at plus 100, adjusted to minus 101, stayed pretty solid in there, got to plus 105, drifting along, and then just in the past few hours went from plus 100 to minus 126. So
if they get wider, then I will look at Latifi, I think.
Dead even at the moment. Going to be an interesting fight. Let's see. That brings us now to our welterweight bout. Neil Magny, Rafael dos Anjos. And is this me or you? This is me, I think. Let's
you.
See. Yeah.
It's you. I counted.
I'm glad they made this fight. Neil Magny is not the most interesting dude you can put across from anyone in the cage. For all his activity and his ability to have a few fun fights. And as fun as his fight with Hector Lombard was, in general, he's kind of, he's the Bisping-esque fighter that doesn't really necessarily always work for the best at weights lower than middleweight, which is the volume striker without the power, who just kind of has to go through all the rounds to make a fight and make a fight tough on himself.
When Neil Magny's fights are fun, it's usually because something goes terribly wrong.
Yeah. And so he's tall, he's rangy, he's learned the basic tools to be a tall, rangy striker. He's got a high volume kicking game. He likes to, his big go-to striking, for better or worse, when he's punching, is a double jab, which is sort of like, it's like a speed bag double jab almost. It's like he throws the left out and then he circles it back and throws it again.
He also likes to do the slapping hook off the jab, which is not really a hook, but he just jab and then just kind of slap you.
Yeah.
To set up. It's all about setting up the right hand at range.
Yeah. And so he throws the double jab and then he'll throw the right. And then the secret is that he'll do that a lot. And then he'll throw the double jab and he'll throw the right high kick. And it's the same motion as his right hand. And, that is pretty much his entire striking game. You get the front kicks, the side kicks, the low kicks, and then you get a bunch of double jab, right hand, jab, left hook, right hand, jab, left, jab, 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 right hand, jab, 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 right hand, jab, jab, high kick. And that's it. Like, that's the whole structure.
Yeah. And I have often critiqued Neil Magny for the jabs not actually being that good.
Yeah.
So
like I said, it's weird speed bag sort of double jab where he pops it out there and then he doesn't bring it back. He just sort of circles it around and re-pops it out there.
Yeah.
And I think, the other side of that is that he's not a very good fighter going backwards, and he's very willing to retreat if you approach. So he doesn't counter particularly well. He just tends to back himself into the fence and shell up, and it's why he's gotten hurt in a lot of his fights. It's also why he's gotten taken down in a lot of his fights, because he just lets fighters in on his legs. He just, there's no defensive movement there. And I think that makes him a little too solvable for Rafael dos Anjos. The question will be, can dos Anjos get inside his reach? Because dos Anjos wants to pressure fight, wants to move forward, has a good sort of creative setup off his jab, is a much more, bobbing, hooking fighter, throws with that Rafael Cordero confidence, even though I don't know that he's necessarily training with Cordero anymore. And he uses it to set up a takedown game, and he's a great top position grappler and control grappler and all these things. He may have trouble with Magny's size everywhere. One of the better things about dos Anjos' game is his ability to play a good, controlling, powerful clinch. That he doesn't just like grab a tie plum and then try to throw knees. This is something I think he's evolved much more recently, that he really starts to try and now steer people to a side and then throw as he steers them to get them off balance a little. And Magny will give him the clinch. He'll give him these opportunities, and it's just a question of whether or not RDA struggles with Magny's size. If he doesn't, then I think Magny gives him too much predictability.
So. Yeah, I can't add too much to that. I think you're right on the money with how I see this fight. Like, Magny liking to back up, not really having a jab that demands respect and makes people back up, not being great off the back foot. Like, it's just a recipe for Dos Anjos getting the kind of fight he likes. I think we now pretty much know that Dos Anjos is at his worst when he is not able to pressure. And I just don't see Magny stopping Dos Anjos from cutting off the cage and coming forward. And if Dos Anjos does that, then it's going to be like Magny's relatively ineffectual striking, which, again, doesn't work that well while retreating, against one of the weapons he's had the most difficulty with, which is just hellacious kicks. Dos Anjos is still one of the best, most Thai-like power round kickers in MMA right now. He is going to have a lot of chances here to chew up the legs and body of Magny, sort of the way that Lorenz Larkin did. And Dos Anjos doesn't have the same speed, but he also does have that clinch game you talked about. I think Magny's size will be a bit of a hurdle here, and I think its size is going to continue to be a hurdle for Dos Anjos because he's used to being a physically dominant fighter where he can just throw people around at lightweight. And at welterweight, that's not like his frame suits welterweight perfectly fine, but he's not much bigger than his opponents anymore. So I think we saw him sort of taking that into account when he fought Tarek Saffiedine. He had to kind of realize, oh, okay, here's what I can do in the clinch. Here's what I can't do. But that being said, he still outdid Tarek Saffiedine in the clinch pretty cleanly.
Yeah.
It wasn't the dominant performance a lot of people were hoping for, but it wasn't a performance that gave me any reason to worry because I saw somebody who ran into a newly challenging division and did a pretty good job of adapting to it. I liked Dos Anjos' Thai clinch work in that fight, and I agree with you. I think he's clearly been working on it lately because it was better than we've seen it ever before.
Yeah.
So you add in the fact that Dos Anjos is also a great power takedown artist and a terrible force to be reckoned with when he gets on top of you, and also just a great submission grappler from any position. It's kind of like a combination of the Larkin and Maya fights for Magny, which doesn't sound good. Like, unless there's just something I'm not seeing about Dos Anjos, this looks like a pretty bad matchup for Neil Magny to me. So I like Dos Anjos. I think he'll take a fairly clean decision and possibly get a finish if he really puts it on Magny early.
It's an interesting idea too, though, because I was thinking about it as you say it. I would pick Magny handily over Saffiedine. And I think that Saffiedine is a tougher matchup for RDA than Magny is.
Yeah, I think so too. But I thought that Dos Anjos handled that matchup really well.
Yeah. Dos Anjos handled it well because, Saffiedine, like we talked about, has all these technical tools, but just is so, like, fits and starts about everything. Yeah. And can meet you technically at any point while then drifting away and just letting you sort of work offense at any point too.
Yeah.
Which would be a nightmare to face somebody like Magny who does not go away and pressures and knows how to just put up volume out there and be rangy.
Yeah. And Magny shares a lot of Saffiedine's flaws as well. The difference is that, like, for opponents for Dos Anjos, Magny is tougher in the clinch where Saffiedine could be beaten there, and Saffiedine was more dangerous at range. But I think Dos Anjos has proven at this point he's capable of adapting to those small tactical changes. Really, it's all about strategy. And if his strategy is allowed to be, I come forward and chew you up, then pretty much anyone, between 185 and 145 is going to have a terrible time fighting RDA.
Yeah, you have to be more like Tony Ferguson, who can really make him overthink the game in front of him.
Yeah.
And Magny's not that dude.
Mm-hmm.
The odds on that fight, RDA is the favorite, opening at -180, adjusting up and down to -184, and then falling to -200. And just in the past couple of days, climbing a little bit to minus 197. Otherwise, staying pretty stable. Magny, the underdog, opening at plus 140, adjusting up and down to plus 155, and then climbing slowly up to plus 170, and just in the past couple days dropping back down to plus 163. So
I think there might be some value in RDA at those odds.
Yeah.
As like a relatively slight favorite, I do think this is a pretty bad matchup for Neal.
It is, especially with Neal not being a great finisher and RDA being better technically. I mean, you just kind of have like those basics at play.
Yeah, because even if Dos Anjos' chin is not what it once was, this isn't probably going to be the matchup where we find that out.
Yeah, definitely. Let's see. Brings us to a women's bantamweight bout now. Title fight, co-main event. Amanda Nunes, Valentina Shevchenko. Connor, what do you
We've
think?
Talked about this fight once before. We can basically just
now.
Yeah, true. Yeah, true. We can basically just recap our original thoughts on the rematch. At least from my perspective, my thoughts on how this will go hasn't changed a ton. It's really about these two women both have persistent problems with their styles. They have styles, like all fighters do, and the flaws of their styles are evident. Amanda Nunes is a powerhouse, explosive striker. Everything she does is explosive. And for her problem seems to be, I don't think really that her problem is stamina. I'm sure that Nunes works very hard in the gym. I'm sure she runs and bikes and swims and spars and rolls and does everything she needs to do to be in shape. And she's a physical specimen. Like, no one would say that Amanda Nunes doesn't look like she's fit for all of her fights.
Yeah.
But she kills herself by throwing all of her energy away on opportunities that don't yield a finish. So when Nunes...
Jeez, we lost him. So yeah, I'm agreeing. I agree with Connor in general. I don't think the fighter gets to her level without paying attention.
I don't know if you saw while I was talking, you could see my eye maybe drift down to the far right of my screen where my icon changed, and I knew the call was about to drop out.
Yeah.
I was just waiting for it. So she either finishes people explosively or she tries to finish them explosively, and that's her last big explosion. And until I see a fight in which that is not the case, until I see Nunes either go out there, throw a huge combo, and then come back to do it again later in the fight, or I see Nunes refuse to throw huge, big finishing combos and make her energy last for up to 25 minutes, then I don't think she can prevent herself from falling into that same hole over and over again. And for Shevchenko, her problem is she doesn't do enough. She's a counter striker to a fault. She just likes to let people show her what they have, which means against a fighter like Nunes, she's going to be surprised. Takedowns, big shots, kicks. Nunes is going to be able to spring things on her that she's not yet ready for. And then the problem there is that, as in their first fight, Shevchenko is crafty enough and tough enough to survive those early errors, but a little too reluctant to go after her opponent to really make it count when Nunes is gassed. So we have Shevchenko looking like she was on her way to winning what would have been 4th and 5th rounds of their first fight. And then we have Nunes coming very, very close on a couple of occasions to finishing Shevchenko in the first 2 rounds. I kind of think this will be the same fight. It's just a matter of how does it go? And I think it'll go relatively the same as first time. I think Shevchenko is crafty enough and durable enough. She can survive and hang on the ground well enough not to get finished, that even if Nunes takes 2 really big rounds off of her, because Nunes will take 2 big rounds off of her, Nunes will not be able to win the next 3. That's my feeling. If Nunes does not go for the kill in those early rounds, that'll be a great change. That would be Nunes officially becoming the female Jose Aldo, and she could just use that power and speed to control the fight and manage her energy. But if she fights like Amanda Nunes, I think Shevchenko wins the last 3, either gets a late TKO or a close decision win.
I will be interested mildly to see if getting her sinusitis cured has anything to do, like if she actually got that fixed, if that has to do with cardio problems. Because
could be.
If you can't breathe through your nose very effectively, that could be a problem. And I don't know how much it's impacted her in her past fights, because we really only learned about it seriously recently as a major problem.
With a fighter like Nunes, like I know that I won't discount that, and we could see a change. But if like that were a big problem, then I would expect Nunes to look like McGregor in the rematch with Diaz. It's like, oh, I worked really, really hard on my stamina this time because that's what I think is the problem, and it added like an extra 2 minutes to his gas tank. Like I think that's what the sinusitis might do for Nunes. The problem I think is in how you manage your energy, how you throw your techniques.
Yeah, I agree much more to that. And actually, what I think it really is I was watching. I think Nunes, not only does she throw all her energy into techniques, but probably the reason that she can't then manage it, and like that's not something that has been fixed or she really figures out how to fix, is because I think she's a incredibly instinct and opening based fighter, instinct and opportunity based fighter.
Mm-hmm.
She's not a structured building, like, you know, really see all things at all times. And, you know, she's not Yoel Romero, who by all accounts should have zero cardio and manages his cardio by being able to see all things at all times and
by being omnipotent.
And has this very like slowly constructed, crafted game plan where even when it doesn't look like he's doing that much, he gets things done in ways that you don't expect. Nunes is out there and she's seeing what her, you know, she's looking for her opening, and she's, in the meantime, she's just kind of letting her brain run on autopilot. And it means that, you know, when she's throwing stuff, she's not really thinking about like
big picture.
Yeah.
Just like McGregor, right? Like this is not to keep going back to the biggest fight of all time, which we've already thankfully started to forget about. But this shares some commonalities as a matchup with McGregor Mayweather, because the difference is Shevchenko, being like the striker from the striking sport, knows how to go into a lengthy fight and say, all right, here's how I'm going to make sure I can do all 25 at peak form. And Nunes is a finisher. Her goal is, I want to land the best shot possible whenever I see the opening.
Because the thing that really kind of keyed me in on that was in her fight with Miesha Tate, where Miesha Tate failed on a takedown, and Nunes stepped back and tried to fire a knee right into her skull while Miesha Tate was still on the ground. And it's like, oh, you're not really thinking at all about like whether or not, like, you just see the opening and you hit the opening, you know?
Yeah.
And that is on, like, that's why you see a lot of that's one of the big reasons that some fighters just foul a lot, is because like, especially those kind of fouls, and they can't get themselves trained out of them.
They smell blood, man. There's an opening, you hit the opening.
And it's one of the reasons that I think that her cardio problems may not be that fixable, because it's not just like, oh, you know, you need to ease off on your shots a little bit. I know you want to bite down and you want to just go out there and bang and all that. It's not that. It's just like, no, this is how hard I throw when I see the opening to throw.
No, she's a smart tactical fighter, and technically, like, she's only getting better. Everything she does looks really good. That's why I say she could be the female Jose Aldo, because her style is really similar. It's just that Jose Aldo became boring Jose Aldo for a reason. He wanted to manage his energy and hold on to his belt, and it remains to be seen whether Nunes can actually do that. The key, obviously, would be to summon the same ancient Egyptian spirit that is inhabiting Yoel Romero, which gives him the wisdom to navigate fights without wasting his energy. So what Nunes, if she wins this fight, she'll come into the cage, she'll kneel down in Shevchenko's corner, that's very important, and she will utter the magic word, Abla Nathan Alba, which will, of course, summon the Gnostic spirit, which will then allow her to share the pharaoh that inhabits Yoel Romero. If she doesn't she doesn't do that, she's screwed.
Yeah, if you don't see that, if you don't see her in the corner muttering and the like beam of light opening up from the top of the arena, then
a fucking like Avengers climax that just a laser shoots into the sky in Edmonton. And remember that word, Zane, Abla Nathan Alba. That's the magic word, okay?
I'm not remembering that word. All right. Yeah, I mean, otherwise, it's really hard to look at round 3 of that fight they're in and see Nunes going the distance and winning.
Right.
And a big part of it, so the other thing you have to look at is Shevchenko has also been getting better at handling herself in MMA, at managing her, at managing danger in MMA and distance and knowing what the right spots to pick are and how to stay safe and to work her game, whether it's in the clinch like she did against Juliana Pena or at range like she did against Holly Holm. She's just getting better and more particular at how to manage the fight.
Yeah. And I think Shevchenko is kind of ahead of the metagame in this division right now.
Yeah.
Because we often say women's bantamweight is like taking a time machine back to men's MMA like 10 years before. And it's getting better in that regard. But like, honestly, she could be just the Anderson Silva of this division, where she's just like, you know what? I'm going to let everyone who fights me screw up. I'm just going to wait till they screw up. And if I have to play guard for 4 minutes straight and don't get a submission, it's fine, because I'm not wasting energy and eventually they'll screw up.
Yep.
And that's kind of how she wins. And it's almost sad to say that might work against a champion, but
yeah, I have to, there's nothing out of that Ronda Rousey or Miesha Tate win that makes you say, oh, Amanda Nunes has fixed her problem. Like, you can't.
They tell you nothing different about Amanda Nunes except maybe like, oh, her punches are continuing to get a little straighter.
Yeah, she's getting a little more crisp on her technique. She's got a better command of range than she used to. But Nunes has a great command of range, and she's hard to hurt. And if Nunes can't knock her out, I can't see her winning the fight.
Being a fight analyst is actually a sacrilege, because it makes you into the kind of person who looks at a fighter who gets nothing but first round finishes, and you're like, I don't like that. I need to see them go into the fourth before I can have any faith in them.
I know.
We're complaining about how quickly Nunes dispatches her opponents, but it's intrinsically tied to the problems that she's had throughout her career.
Yeah, there's a reason that she lost her fight to Kat Zingano. Right.
Despite a great start.
Yeah.
And
there's
almost
she has losses to Alexis Davis and Sara D'Aurelio.
Yeah.
People who are infinitely less athletic than her.
Mm-hmm.
She's got something to prove still.
Yes.
Odds on that fight, Amanda Nunes is the slight underdog. Opened at plus 100, dropped down to minus 110, was riding there for a while, and has since risen straight back up to plus 100. And Shevchenko opened at minus 130, jumped up to minus 114, was staying right there, and has dropped back down to minus 125. I think the odds could be a little wider. Nunes, to me, has too much to prove against somebody that's really hard to knock out in Valentina Shevchenko.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the thing too. Also, like McGregor Mayweather, like we're saying, well, Nunes could finish Shevchenko, but before she gasses, but that like Shevchenko's just the right kind of fighter that's very hard to do. Like, it's a more she's not Ronda Rousey or Miesha Tate, where if you catch her with a big shot in the first round, she's not going to panic and freak out, and her game is not going to fall apart. She's going to survive or do what she can to survive. And that alone is enough to think that Nunes is probably in for a very difficult fight if this goes past 2.
Yeah. Maybe it won't be. Maybe we'll be wrong. Maybe Amanda Nunes has gas tank for days and all that. And this will be her coming out party. But
I hope so. Be great.
I hope so too. All right, that brings us to our main event now. Demetrious Johnson, Ray Borg, and fantastic fight. Really, really looking forward to. I mean, I get that it's Demetrious Johnson is king of the mountain, but I love watching Demetrious Johnson fight. This isn't his biggest challenge to date, but I like watching Ray Borg fight, and I like watching Demetrious Johnson fight. And I think the thing that has me more excited about this than pretty much anybody else, I think, out there, I don't know, maybe there's some people who are excited about it as me, probably other hardcore nerds. The thing that really has me interested in this fight is that I think Ray Borg is every bit as fast as Demetrious Johnson. And doesn't mean every bit is good, and that doesn't mean it. It doesn't really mean that, he's going to win. I'm not like saying, oh, he's going to be super competitive throughout just because of that. But it makes me very interested to see it in a way that I think it's a match that maybe Tim Elliott had some of that, but Elliott has other problems. He cuts too much weight. He doesn't have the gas tank. He was almost going to pull out of that fight. This is closer to like, Borg doesn't have the technical depth of game yet of somebody like John Dodson, or even maybe not even Kyoji Horiguchi, maybe. But it's something closer to those matchups to why I'm interested in it, because Borg is just so fast.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is not Demetrious Johnson, even against Henry Cejudo, or certainly not Wilson Hayes, or Chris Carriasso or Ali Bagotinov. This is somebody who is every bit as lightning quick as Johnson. And I think that makes the fight interesting. On the flip side, what makes the fight less interesting is that Borg really only has one boxing, like he only has one set of combinations that he throws. And it's sort of my camera's drifting right now. Lovely. It's sort of it's a jab to uppercut, or jab to hook, or jab to straight. And he's always coming with the jab like jab to right hand combo.
Mm-hmm.
Always. Literally, you go back and because we're watching his striking take leaps and bounds from fight to fight, from a dude who got handled by Dustin Ortiz and Justin Scoggins, to a guy in his fight with Hussier Formiga, who won large portions of that fight standing, with a highly increased confidence in his hands, and his speed and his power, and the willingness to just pick his spots and throw these left-right combinations. They are pretty predictable, though. Even Formiga, who's fast, is very fast, but not nearly as powerful, not nearly as creative or defensively sound as Demetrious Johnson, was able to move off of and pick off a lot of Borg's combinations, because Borg, he kind of like, he has this thing and he's trying, it's like he's trying to confuse an opponent. And he does this long, like, arms out sort of thing where he's going like this and he's twisting, and it's like 5 or 10 or 12 seconds long that he's doing that. And then he comes out and he just like jumps in, left hand, right uppercut.
Yeah. What's it going to be? What's it going to be? What's it going to be? It's some variation of a 1-2.
Yeah, some variation of a 1-2. And it just kind of lets people time it. Is like, the actually like giving them that much time, because it's not like Henry Cejudo throws a lot more than a left-right. But Henry Cejudo comes in and he throws a left-right, and then 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 like 5 right hands, and like he stays on people, and he keeps this very like fast-paced and slightly broken rhythm, because he's keeping a fast pace and pouring offense on you all the time. Whereas Ray Borg, it's like 1-2. Okay, I'm back out of range, and let's see. What are you going to see? Where's it going to be? Oh, it's a 1-2. And opponents.
I think he's making the right steps. Like,
yeah, it's the right step.
If you want to take the boxer's version of the Bruce Lee quote, it should be like, first I learned how to throw a 2, then I learned how to throw a 1, then I learned how to throw a 1-2, and only then did I really learn how to throw a 2. Like, he's right now in the stage where everything's a 1-2, because you're supposed to lead with your jab. Soon he'll get to the stage where he's like, maybe I don't have to lead with the jab anymore, but he's not there yet. And
because of that, maybe he'll come out with a new step. Like, he's a young kid, he's working, he's made big leaps from Scoggins to Smolka to Formiga in 3 fights. Was
compared to how he looked against Ortiz in his UFC debut. That was just in 2014.
Yeah,
he's gotten so much better.
He is getting way better all the time. So he could be, turned in a huge corner.
Plus that Jackson Wink with Brandon Gibson.
Yeah. So he's going to be getting the right coaching. He's going to be making strides. It's just, from what I've seen, you can't bet on he's going to be better. Like, you just can't say, like, oh, well, he's going to be better, so he's going to win.
Yeah, and if you are, you have to have specific ways in which he's going to be better and how those are going to work.
Yeah. And at the moment, his striking game is just not deep enough. I think it'll be a couple of rounds of giving Demetrious Johnson pause, of making Johnson adjust and be like, shit, this dude's really fucking fast. But after that, it's going to be very much something I think that Johnson can break down over rounds. The other interesting thing I noticed, especially in his Wilson Hayes fight, so, you have the Demetrious Johnson in his Wilson Hayes fight, in his best fight, in a chance to really just show off everything he's been working on. Johnson is he's unpredictable and he's creative. He's got a great set of kicks that he likes to surprise people with. And he is always, he keeps a great, unpredictable distance, unpredictable rhythm. He doesn't do the, waiting and trying to, fake you out and build you up thing and all that. He just throws. When he punches, though, it's almost always a right hand first. Almost always. In fact, if he wants to jab, he will shift stances into a right hand lead and jab with his right hand to throw the left hand behind it.
Yeah, he's better than he used to be, but when Demetrious Johnson throws his left hand for 10 years, it was always because he would switch to southpaw and get you to follow him and throw a left cross.
Yeah.
He's not but it doesn't really hurt him in the way that it would hurt others, because he's not really a traditional boxer.
No. He's insanely fast enough and creative enough and has a good enough command of distance and timing and defense and range that it doesn't matter that he's always throwing right hands, or that he's switching stances to throw a right jab to then throw a left cross, or that he kind of gets his head picked up on line when he has to throw his left hook. And he's too fast to make that cost him, but it'll be interesting to see against somebody like Borg, who is as fast as him.
Right. Yeah, I think that's, excuse me. I think that's one of the more interesting things about this fight, is that Ray Borg has something that Demetrious Johnson will have to adjust to. He may be faster than DJ at this point. I think DJ is slowing down a little bit as he becomes, a 30-something-year-old man. He's 29. But he doesn't have that same speed he had. If you compare Demetrious Johnson even against Hayes on pure speed to his fight with Dominic Cruz, there's a difference.
Yeah, he's 31 now.
Right. So, it's not unreasonable at all that he's slowing down. He's still easily one of the fastest guys in the sport, but Borg might be the fastest guy in this division right now in the UFC.
Yeah, his fight with Formiga, it's you would go back and watch the punches he's throwing, and it's just holy shit.
It's very quick.
Way too fast.
Yeah, and that carries through into his scrambling, his wrestling, his submission game. He's got a lot of advantages there. And while Demetrious Johnson is figuring out that speed, Borg will have the chance to surprise him with some things. Pat pointed out in heavy hands that he does a great job of hitting on breaks, which is something that could work really well against DJ, is to kind of come in and then hit him when he angles off with a hook or a kick. He does a really good job of scrambling. So if he runs into body-to-body contact, he'll rip around to your back or take you down or whatever. He's very creative and is always in a position to move to the next thing. But that is because everything that his game is built on is, as you said, pretty bog standard. He's not yet developed a lot of variety on his feet and with his takedown setups. And so everything is I'm going to surprise you and then I'm going to transition on you. Yeah. And if he can't surprise you, or if he's not allowed to transition, Ray Borg is at a decided disadvantage, even against people not as good as Demetrious Johnson.
Yeah, can't make a quick note here. One of the things I noticed in his fight with Formiga is that he would get in the clinch with Formiga several times, and he would land a hard knee, and Formiga would lock down the clinch on him and keep him there, and Borg would do nothing else. He would just wait to break and then throw a right hook off the break when he could, but there was no at all like advancing that clinch. It was just, here's a knee. Oh, okay, I guess we're just stuck here. I'll just wait it out.
Yeah. Yeah, so like Demetrious Johnson, when Demetrious Johnson relies a lot on a lead right, I have more faith that it's because it does something good for his game than when Ray Borg relies on a 1-2. Because Borg is 24, he just started, he just learned how to throw that 1-2, basically. So he just hasn't built on it yet. Whereas like Demetrious Johnson is at that Mayweather stage where he can throw the lead rights because he knows exactly how to time them, and he knows exactly what comes after the right hand. I think he likes that lead right because it's tricky. I mean, you lean in on somebody, they think you're coming with a left hook or something, and you pop them with like a low power right hand that's just very fast. That is an instant bridge to the inside. If you can lean in and stick that right hand, you can very easily step through, just as Floyd often did to take an angle. Johnson does that to tie up in the clinch. He did that to Cejudo. Like, he landed 6 lead rights or so in that fight, and every single one led to a tie-up or led to him getting Cejudo's back in some way.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is like when you see simplicity in Demetrious Johnson's game, it's because the thing just keeps working. So like he's just going to keep doing it. And if it stops working, Demetrious Johnson will do something else. And he has many other things he can do. And that's always the challenge you're fighting Demetrious Johnson. Yes, Ray Borg has a great camp behind him. He's very fast. He's a great young athlete. He's just not ready to handle the depth of Demetrious Johnson's game. You know, I think he can rattle the surface, but when it gets down into the layers beneath, when it gets into rounds 3, 4, and 5, I think Borg is going to be playing catch up. And really the turning point in this fight will be when Demetrious Johnson stops Borg from transitioning. When he keeps Borg in striking, when he keeps Borg in bottom position, when he keeps Borg in the clinch, when he sticks him in some phase, range, or position for a long time, Borg, who loves scrambling, who loves the transition, is going to start to get anxious. He's going to start having to guess what the next move from Demetrious Johnson is going to be. And at that point, once you start playing the guessing game with DJ, it's basically mind control. He is going to use all of your assumptions and expectations and anxieties against you to set up all the other things that he's capable of doing. So a couple of good rounds, Borg, an interesting opportunity for Johnson to adapt, but I have yet to see Demetrious Johnson as flyweight champ fail to adapt, and I think he will adapt quite well here. So I like him by a 3rd or 4th round finish, submission, or TKO, however he wants it, basically. He's the Mighty Mouse, damn it.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see how he finishes this. If he can, I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be totally shocked if he doesn't. If Borg just stays a little too defensive and fast throughout, and is a little too good at scrambling to just get stuck. But yeah, it should be an interesting fight for at least a couple of rounds, and I'm really looking forward to it. I want to see Borg develop, because I think this is actually, given Borg's confidence and his rate of improvement, I think this is actually a really good fight for him right now, because it'll let him walk away. He seems more like on the Cejudo track, where it's like,
yeah, take the loss now. Why not, right? Like,
yeah, like you're going to fight the champ, you lose, then you just go back and you start building more tools, because, you know, he is a championship caliber athlete, so it's just all about using the time to build the tools.
Yeah, the unfortunate reality of this division and the way the UFC matches their fights and puts their rosters together is that you have no shortage of Borgs challenging Demetrious Johnson's to challenging Demetrius's title, because people get a couple wins. If you're Cejudo, if you're Horiguchi, if you're Borg, you might be a great challenger. You're just not going to be ready when you fight Demetrious Johnson. But for the people like Borg and Horiguchi and Cejudo, they can be like, holy shit, look where I was 2 years ago. Like, I can keep getting better. They know they haven't. There's no way that Johnson can convince Borg he's hit his ceiling in the way that we suspect he did to Wilson Hayes.
Yeah. Also, I think we have evidence that Borg does not adjust well on the fly, in that he's still rocking the Taz Mexican Devil all these years after his debut.
Why? Do you don't like the Taz Mexican Devil?
It has got to be, pound for pound, one of the worst nicknames in all of MMA. Especially for a dude whose last name is Borg.
Yeah, right.
Like, how do you end up with the Taz Mexican Devil when your name is Borg?
Yeah, it's got to be like Ray, no resistance. Ray, resistance is futile Borg or something. Like Ray, the assimilator Borg. There's so many
Ray
options.
7 of 9 Borg, Ray Cyborg, Ray, you know, like
Ray, First Contact is a mediocre movie Borg.
Yeah, well, you know, can't win them all. But we know that it's even Corey Anderson realized at some point he had to adjust.
Oh, don't celebrate that decision. I will cry myself to sleep for the rest of my life thinking of what could have been. Corey Anderson, if he'd been Beast in 25-8, he would be champion right now. I know that in my heart.
All right, on that note, you can find me on Twitter at these ends. Oh, we got odds.
He was so ready to get out of here.
I am. Okay. Borg opened at plus 400, now plus 690. Demetrious Johnson opened at minus 600, now minus 1124.
Might be some value on Demetrious at those odds.
All right.
Yeah, that's the Demetrious Johnson fight. The odds are basically what you'd expect.
Find me on Twitter at TheZaneTime. You can find Connor on Twitter at BoxingBush. You can find both of us over at BloodyElbow.com. You can find our videos at MMANation.com, DOTCOM, over on YouTube. That's our YouTube channel. Subscribe to it. Give this video a like. That's a thumbs up. Put your notifications on, all that good shit. So you will be among the first to get the latest Bloody Elbow shows, news, videos, analysis, all that good stuff we do week in, week out. We will be back next week for UFC Fight Night Rockhold versus Branch. God, what a weird opponent. In Pittsburgh, September card. Mike Perry, Thiago Alves, co-main event. We'll have a Vivisection and a Care Don't Care If I Did It, Knuckle Up, Heavy Hands, all that good stuff we always do. So thanks, everyone, for tuning in. We'll see you soon.